And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome aboard, and this is your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. Starting out with the state of the sea ice, we are seeing a little bit of ice growth now occurring across Arctic regions up there off the Beaufort Sea coastline and up into the further deeper into the Arctic Ocean. We did have the seasonal ice minimum that was declared Arctic-wide by the National Sea Ice Center at September 10th, but for Alaska specifically, it was about a week later, around mid-September, 16th, 17th, give or take a couple of days. But now we'll begin to slowly see the development of some sea ice here as we head through the first part of October, though a weather system coming up this weekend is going to bring milder and windy conditions with rain along the west coast, especially south of the Bering Strait. On the satellite image as of mid-afternoon this Tuesday, we have a pretty wrapped up low here south of Haida Gwaii and southwest of Vancouver Island. The main impact of this low will remain south of the Panhandle. Ridging of high pressure over the Gulf up into the mainland, so we've seen some areas of clearing. Back to the west, though, we have a low pressure coming off of the Kamchatka Peninsula. It's going to stay just outside the Gulf of Anadyr, pushing towards St. Lawrence Island Wednesday and then into Norton Sound east side by Thursday morning or so. This is going to push a front eastward, and with this front and the moisture associated with it, it's going to lead to some snow breaking out across parts of the Alaska Range and in the White Mountains there north and east of Fairbanks. Eventually, there will be a stronger low come up out of the North Pacific into the Bering Sea this weekend, and that's the system that's going to be milder, wetter, and windier, and that'll impact areas from along the Aleutian chain up into the Alaska Peninsula, southwest and west coast here as we go through Saturday and on Sunday. In the meantime, for Wednesday, the low stays off of Vancouver Island down here in the North Pacific, well south of the Panhandle. Meanwhile, the low out in the northern areas of the Bering will be approaching Norton Sound by Wednesday afternoon with this weakening occluded front working eastward inland. This front, though, is the one that will produce some snow, especially along the Brooks Range, South Slopes, and along parts of the Alaska Range and in through the White Mountains. Several inches of snow could fall in the higher elevations of the White Mountains, as well as in through the Alaska Range. Now, as we head into Thursday, the front works its way eastward with a weak secondary low forming from around Cook Inlet on up toward Prince William Sound for Thursday afternoon. So some showers pushing in along the northeastern Gulf Coast, northern Panhandle. Back to the west, this will be snow in through here, and then up to the far north, some snow showers. But as I mentioned, a stronger low will be coming out of the North Pacific and into the Bering Sea for the weekend. In the meantime, north winds 15 knots, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, waves 2-3 feet on Wednesday. Northwest winds 10 knots, Dixon Entrance 10 to 15 knots, waves 2-3 feet there, especially as you get outside of Ketchikan, Metlakatla. The outer coast, look for northwest winds 15 to maybe 20 knots off of Sitka from outside of Cross Sound to off of Prince of Wales Island with waves 8 to 9 feet, and then northwest to west winds 10 knots from outside of Yakutat Bay to Cape Suckling. For Thursday, with that front approaching from the west, more or less weakening to more of a trough ahead of it, south-southeast winds 15 knots inner channels with waves 2 to 3 feet. For the outer coast, generally south winds around 20 knots with waves 7 to 8 feet. For the northwestern Gulf, Prince William Sound, southeast winds 15 knots on Wednesday with waves 2 to 3 feet. South winds outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance at 15 knots. Strongest winds will be lower Cook Inlet, 20 to 25 knots from the south with waves running right around 5 feet, especially there as you get west of the Homer Spit. And then for Thursday, in the wake of the secondary low that's going to be taking shape toward Prince William Sound, the northwest corner of the Gulf, westerly winds on the backside of the system could be gale force, 35 knots, lower Cook Inlet and Kennedy Entrance to northeast of Kodiak Island with waves 8 to 10 feet. Northern Cook Inlet, we're looking at west winds at 15 knots with 2 to 3 foot waves. On Wednesday, winds will be southwesterly around Kodiak Island and east of Chiknik to 25 knots. Elsewhere, southwest winds around 20 knots and waves 4 to 5 feet on the North Pacific side and 6-7 feet on the Bering side. For Thursday, west winds around 25 knots in the vicinity of Kodiak Island with 5 to 6 foot waves. East of Chicknick, 35 knot northwesterly gales with 6 foot waves. And then as we trail out, northwest winds 25 knots off of Sandpoint and False Pass, 3 foot waves. And for the Bering side of the peninsula, winds will be southwest to west, 20 to 25 knots, 6 to 7 feet waves on Thursday. For areas of the Aleutians, strongest winds will be out through the central Aleutians, out of the northwest, 25 to 30 knots, especially Aka toward Adak. And then as we go into Thursday, look for west-northwest winds, eastern Aleutians, maybe as high as 25 knots south of Unalaska, becoming southwesterly, 20 to 25 knots as we get west there of Kiska. And along the southwest coast for Wednesday, southwest winds of 20 knots into Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bay with 5 foot waves. As we look west, 25 knot southwest winds, 14 foot waves, over around, I should say, St. Matthew. The Pribilofs will see westerly winds of 25 knots with 8 to 9 foot waves. Lower Yukon coast, Hooper Bay, southwest winds of 25 knots after that front has pushed inland overnight tonight into early Wednesday morning. South winds ahead of it in through Norton Sound, 20 knots with 4 foot waves in that wider expanse between Imanak and Nome. On Thursday, winds are generally going to come westerly along the west and southwest coast. Look for 20 to 25 knots from Bristol Bay, especially Kuskokwim Bay, up through north of Nunavik Island, with waves around 4 or 5 feet. Strongest winds will be out toward St. Matthew with 30 knot west winds and 10 to 11 foot waves. Pribilof southwest winds, 25 knots and 8 to 9 foot waves. Winds into Norton Sound will be westerly at 15 knots with 3 to 4 foot waves. For Wednesday, south of the Bering Strait, look for east winds off of the west side here of the Seward Peninsula at 10 knots, waves 3-4 feet. North side of St. Lawrence Island could see waves as high as 6-7 feet with northerly winds at 20 knots on Wednesday. Strongest winds along the Chukchi Sea will be Wainwright to off of Point Hope and Cape Lisburn. East-northeast winds 30 knots with waves 6 to 9 feet, highest off of Cape Lisburn. And then along the Beaufort Sea coast, east-northeast winds 15 knots with waves running generally 2 to 3 feet. For Thursday, west winds 10 knots around Kaktovik, turning northeasterly 15 knots toward Utqiagvik and Prudhoe Bay, increasing 20 to 25 knots, Wainwright to around Point Hope. Strongest winds again just off of Cape Lisburn, northeasterly 25 knots, waves there as high as 7-8 feet. And then coming down through the Bering Strait, lower Chukchi Sea, into the North Bering, north to northwest winds at 15 knots with waves 3 to 4 feet. And on the north side of St. Lawrence Island on Thursday, winds will turn more easterly, 15 to 20 knots with waves of 3 to 4 feet.